Stars shimmered like silent witnesses beyond the glass of the command bridge, their cold light casting reflections across the alien alloy floors of the Valari Sentinel. Commander Nix Thalen stood motionless, staring at the distortion just beyond the patrol sector's edge, a flicker in space that refused to stabilize. It had begun hours ago, just a faint anomaly on their scanners, dismissed as a gravitational echo. But now, as the space rippled again and something massive slid into view, Thalen's gut whispered what the data could not. This was no natural occurrence. The crew fell into a practice hush, officers exchanging uncertain glances. "What am I looking at?" Nix asked, voice calm but edged with tension. "Object is metallic, massive, no registry." "It's Commander. It's human architecture," said Lieutenant Varric, the ship's analyst. His reptilian features tightened in disbelief. "But that's impossible." Thalen's expression didn't flinch, but her knuckles whitened against the edge of the console. Put on the main screen, the unknown vessel filled the display like a silent god emerging from a void. Its silhouette was unmistakably Terran. Angular hull, bristling weapon bays, and an old Earth insignia half-scorched but still defiant. No ship like this should exist. Not after the collapse. For nearly 2 centuries, humanity had vanished from galactic history, snuffed out in a self-consuming war that left Earth a radioactive tomb. The Coalition had written them off as extinct, a brief, violent species that burned too fast. Yet here was a ghost, armed and alive. Signals scrambled to the bridge as the AI filtered through a static-rich hail. Then, abruptly, a voice cut through, clear, female human. "This is Commander Ilera Cross of the Terran vessel Valkyrie. You are approaching restricted human airspace. Identify yourselves or be considered hostile." Thalen stepped forward. "Repeat that transmission." The voice came again, unwavering. "You are in violation of secure Terran space. Last warning. Identify." Shock spread through the crew. "Commander," Varric said, "there's no Terran space anymore." "She doesn't know that," Thalen muttered. "Or she doesn't care." On the view screen, the Valkyrie remained still, but something in its posture radiated menace. An old warship reborn. Its size alone dwarfed anything in Coalition fleet records. But it was the way it simply existed. No diplomatic escort, no communication history. That chilled the room. "Is it alone?" Thalen asked. "No sign of a fleet. But its stealth systems, they're beyond anything we've seen. It's possible others are cloaked," Varric replied. A subtle tremor ran through the deck. Barely detectable, but every trained eye noticed. "She's locking weapons," Thalen said. "She means it." She tapped her comm, opened a direct line. A breath. Then the voice returned, this time live. "I am Commander Thalen of the Valari Sentinel, representing the Galactic Coalition. We believed humanity was lost. We have no hostile intent." There was a pause. "Belief doesn't change reality. This space is under Terran reclamation. Turn back." Thalen studied the woman's face, projected now onto the screen. Commander Cross. Young, poised. But her eyes carried the same weight Thalen had seen in war veterans and survivors. She wasn't bluffing. This wasn't bravado. It was the certainty of someone who had already decided what lines she wouldn't let others cross. "We can't just turn back," Thalen said. "We have protocols, investigations. If you are truly human, if others survived. We didn't survive. We endured. There's a difference." The screen cut to black. The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon. No threat, no ultimatum. Just absence. Orders. Varric asked quietly. "Stand down weapons. Pull back 50 clicks," Thalen replied. "You're not reporting this to the Council?" asked First Officer Colleen. "Of course I am," she said. "But not before we understand what we're dealing with. And who." Back in her quarters, Thalen replayed the encounter again and again. The certainty in Ilera Cross's voice haunted her. A human warship, decades if not centuries advanced, emerging now. Alone, armed, not asking for help or peace, but territory. The Council would panic. Factions would call for preemptive strikes, others for treaties. But Thalen knew better than most what fear could do, how quickly it turned opportunity into blood. There was another layer beneath this. The timing, the precision. This wasn't random. Somewhere far below, in the ship's lower decks, the AI filtered fragments of old Terran data, bits of language, pattern analysis, heat signatures. Every byte said the same thing. The Valkyrie wasn't just a relic. It was a message, and Ilara Cross was its messenger. Ilara stood in silence within the command core of the Valkyrie, eyes fixed on the panoramic display of stars shifting in slow arcs around her vessel. The ship thrummed with a patient hum beneath her boots, its systems quietly cycling, watching, thinking. To most, it would seem asleep, but she knew better. "Status," she murmured. "Defensive grid at full capacity," came the voice of Aegis, the ship's AI, calm male, cultivated to carry gravitas. "Enemy vessel has retreated to observation distance. No signs of immediate aggression. Coalition probes have resumed passive scans. They're testing us," she said, crossing her arms. "Not for weakness. For a purpose. You didn't destroy them," Aegis noted. "That will be interpreted as mercy." "No," Ilara replied. It was control. Silence settled between woman and machine. She walked the length of the bridge, passing panels glowing with shifting light. Each post was a heartbeat of forgotten Earth. Navigation data, old world records, war logs, music, history, ghosts encoded in circuitry. Her legacy and her burden. She paused at a console and touched the interface. A moment later, a holographic display rose, showing the fractured remains of the human diaspora, exiled settlements, dead outposts, signals too faint to verify. The galaxy had moved on without them, but she hadn't. Ilara Cross had been born in darkness, not metaphorically, but literally. Beneath the rock canopy of the subterranean colony of Eos, humanity's last sanctuary, a place built from desperation and genius, buried deep in the crust of a rogue planet. No sunlight, no sky, just pressure, steel, and silence. They called themselves the inheritors, not of Earth, but of what it had taught them. The cost of pride, the price of haste, the need for patience. Ilara had been trained from birth in disciplines most civilizations took lifetimes to master. Strategy, diplomacy, engineering, survival. She could disassemble a fusion drive before she could write her name. Leadership was never a choice. It was designed into her bones. And when the Valkyrie was built, designed as the last arc, the first sword, there was only one name chosen to guide it. Now, decades later, she stood at the edge of known space, staring down the descendants of those who once scorned humanity's warnings. And they had the nerve to ask her to explain herself. Aegis's voice broke her thoughts. "Coalition transmission incoming, not military. Put it through." A new voice echoed across the bridge, measured, diplomatic, and unfamiliar. "This is Ambassador Rin Veleth of the Galactic Coalition Diplomatic Corps. We request an audience. Peaceful, in neutral space. We have questions." Ilara narrowed her eyes. "They want answers," she said to Aegis. "But what they really want is reassurance." "Shall I decline?" "No, not yet." She hesitated. "Send coordinates. Controlled zone. 1 hour." The comm closed. Ilara turned toward the observation deck, where stars stretched like silver scars against the void. Her reflection followed her, tall, armored, eyes sharp beneath a storm of auburn hair pulled into a precision braid. The kind of face designed to look fearless, but not inhuman. She remembered the first time she saw a real sky, only a simulation, but to her it had been sacred, blue and endless, the kind of beauty worth bleeding for. That was what her ancestors had lost, what she was trying to reclaim. In the designated chamber, when the diplomatic envoy arrived, Ilara met them alone. No guards, no weapons visible, just her presence, poised like a blade hidden in silk. Ambassador Rin Veleth stepped forward, flanked by 2 aides. He was tall and slight, with skin that shimmered like burnished metal, a synthetic biohybrid, one of the newer species who had never even known Earth. "You are a long way from your past, Commander Cross," he said gently. "We're not looking back," Ilara replied, "only forward." Then help us understand. Are you the only one? She studied him. He was intelligent, careful, maybe even honest, but she couldn't give him the full truth. Not yet. Humanity never died, she said. We adapted, survived in the shadows, watched the galaxy forget us. We learned who our enemies were, and who might still be allies. Do you see the Coalition as a threat? I see the Coalition as fragmented and unpredictable. That makes it dangerous. Velith didn't argue. Instead, he asked, why reveal yourselves now? Ilera stepped forward, gaze level. Because the galaxy is shifting again. Powers realigning. Old lies stirring. And if we don't shape the new order, someone else will. Aegis's voice interrupted over the intercom. Commander, unauthorized surveillance drone approaching our perimeter. Neutralize it, she said without blinking. Non-lethal. Outside, a flash of light blinked into the void. Quiet, surgical, final. Velith flinched. We extended a hand, Ilera said softly, but we are not here to be dissected. The ambassador seemed to understand then. This was not a relic of a forgotten species. This was a force, one that had waited long enough. As the envoy departed under escort, Ilera returned to the bridge. The stars were still there, but she saw them differently now, not as destinations, as territories, battlefields. Their fear will grow, Aegis said. It should, she replied. We didn't build this ship to be ignored. Outside, the Valkyrie turned silently in the void, engines burning soft blue fire. War wasn't the goal, but it was an option. The chamber was dim, lit only by the slow pulse of holographic displays, tracing lines across interstellar maps. Commander Thalen leaned forward, studying the old human warpaths that now flickered back to life. It was all classified, scrubbed from public archives, buried in political silence. But someone had restored it. Someone with access. Someone like Ilera Cross. Across the table, Ambassador Velith's composure had cracked. The report before him detailed more than sensor scans or diplomatic exchanges. It was a record of history long denied, evidence that during the old human coalition conflict, betrayal had come from within. Not all species had acted in defense. Some had struck preemptively, not to protect themselves, but to eliminate what they feared, humanity's potential. She has this? Velith asked, voice tight. She showed it to me, Thalen said. Didn't threaten, didn't posture. Just let me see it. And she's not here for vengeance. Thalen tapped the screen. But she remembers. Every lie, every name, every fleet. Silence. Outside, the stars spun slow circles, uncaring. Ilera, aboard the Valkyrie, stood in her personal chamber, walls adorned with relics from Earth's fall, fragments of solar flags, scorched alloys, a single preserved flower in crystal, a museum of loss. And warning, she turned as Aegis delivered the update. The Coalition has begun reallocating defense fleets to border systems. Increased chatter among the KRYLL faction suggests preemptive strike planning. You were correct. They always move when they're afraid, she said, brushing her fingers across the etched surface of a faded Earth emblem. They remember your ancestors, but they forget what made them dangerous. No, she said quietly. They remember exactly what made us dangerous. That's the problem. Aegis paused. There's been contact, off the record, from a dissenting coalition group. Her eyes narrowed. On what terms? They wish to meet. Discreetly. They claim to possess intelligence on a rising military presence forming within the outer colonies, not coalition-sanctioned. Ilera nodded slowly. The ghost stirring in their basement. She knew what this meant. Not all threats came from outside. The old war hadn't ended with treaties. It had simply faded into fatigue. And somewhere in the coalition's vast web, remnants of the past had festered. When she arrived at a rendezvous point, an abandoned refueling station floating in the ruins of a dead star system, the air was thick with rot and dust. The Valkyrie remained cloaked at a distance. She came alone, wearing only a light exoframe and the presence of someone who didn't need protection. Her contact was already waiting. Admiral Roveren, long presumed retired, a veteran of the human wars. His skin was pale, ridged with veins of silver, enhanced for endurance, not diplomacy. "You're braver than I expected," he said. "I'm just less afraid," she replied. They stood in silence before a broken window that looked out onto a shattered moon. "The coalition is no longer unified," Varen said. "Not truly. Most species play politics. But some of us prepare. For war? For inevitability," he said. "You reappear at the worst possible time. Or the best." He didn't disagree. "There's a faction," he said finally. "Old blood. They believe your return confirms prophecy." Ilara's brow arched slightly. "I've been called a lot of things. Myth isn't one of them. To them, you're a symbol. The last predator. Proof that the galaxy needs cleansing before it can unify. They're preparing to strike? They've already begun." He handed her a data shard. "You'll need this." She took it, tucking it into her wrist interface. "Why help me?" "Because I fought your kind," he said. "And I know what happens when we underestimate you." As she turned to leave, he added, "There are more like me, watching, waiting." Back aboard the Valkyrie, she loaded the shard. The screen flickered, then bloomed with footage. Ships gathering in shadow, old designs reactivated, unknown technologies fused with forbidden AI. A rogue force not loyal to the coalition but born from it. Human-shaped but alien-minded. Thalen watched the same footage 2 hours later, eyes hard. "So we were never hunting a ghost," she said. "We were ignoring a storm." She was a warning, Vela said quietly. "No," Thalen corrected. "She's a countermeasure." The realization rippled through the upper command tiers like a silent wave. Ilara Cross had not returned for war, but for prevention, and her presence had forced shadows into the open. Still, not everyone saw it that way. From a darkened chamber deep in Coalition space, a figure watched the same footage. Hands clasped, eyes sharp. "She's too visible," the figure murmured. "She disrupts balance." "Order, sir," came a voice from behind. "Begin Protocol Blackveil. Eliminate her." Quietly. Outside, the galaxy turned as it always had. Stars blooming, systems dying, empires whispering to themselves. But something old had stirred, and something older still was watching. The Valkyrie shuddered, barely perceptible, but Ilara felt it in her bones. She turned to Aegis before he could even speak. "We're being watched." "Confirmed," the AI replied. "Passive scans show no signatures, but entropy deviation is consistent with cloaked observation drones. Coalition design modified. Modified by who? That's the question." Ilara stared out at the starscape beyond the bridge, where nothing moved, yet everything listened. The galaxy had gone quiet in the last 30 hours. No formal communiques, no diplomatic overtures. Just silence. The kind of silence that spoke of meetings behind closed doors and weapons warming in their cradles. She tapped her wrist. The data shard from Admiral Varen still tucked in her armor. What she'd seen since decoding it gnawed at her. The Black Veil faction wasn't just building. They were infiltrating. Across the coalition, across species lines, eroding trust and inserting false narratives. A war was coming, not declared but orchestrated. And she was a spark they would use to ignite it. "Set a course for Eos Prime," she said. "Secure channel. Stealth mode." "That's off limits," Aegis cautioned. "You haven't returned since." "I know, but if they're coming for me, I need to remind them where I was forged." The journey was swift and silent. Eos Prime drifted alone in the black, a cold road planet, long stripped of habitability. But far beneath its scorched crust lay the remains of the Inheritor Core, the final bastion of surviving humans who would become myth to the galaxy. And now, perhaps, its only hope. As the Valkyrie descended into the cavernous vaults, long-dead lights flickered to life, responding to her presence. Recognition. Obedience. The old system still knew her name. She walked the hall of command relics, past cryotombs and data cores humming with long-forgotten knowledge. And there, in the sanctum of memory, she faced a council of elders, those who had stayed behind, who had preserved the flame while she carried the sword. "You weren't supposed to return unless it was the end," said Elder Kor, voice brittle with age. "It's not the end," Ilara said, "but it's close." She laid the shard on the table, watching as the holograms bloomed. Fleet blueprints, assassination protocols, infiltration cells. A war beneath the skin of the galaxy. "They mean to frame us," she said. "Make it look like humanity's return is a threat. Draw the coalition into fracturing itself." "Then we finish what they started?" asked another, younger voice, Ira, a strategist bred from the post-Exodus generation. "Strike first?" "No," Ilara said. "We hold, and we expose them." Back aboard the Valari Sentinel, Thalen received an encrypted signal, origin unknown, clearance codes ancient, predating even the formation of the modern coalition. She reviewed the contents once. Then again, her eyes narrowed as realization took shape. It wasn't just proof of the Black Veil. It was names, fleet admirals, intelligence directors, even planetary governors. The infection was everywhere. She forwarded it straight to Velith, knowing the fallout would be seismic, but something in her gut twisted. She had thought Ilara Cross was the unknown. Now she realized Ilara was a constant. The others were the variables. Across coalition space, the exposure hit like lightning. Arrests, denials, violence. On more than one world, old human sympathizers emerged from hiding, emboldened not by Ilara's strength, but by her presence. She hadn't fired a shot. She hadn't made a demand. She had simply arrived. But not everyone wanted the truth. In the Outer Rim, a Black Veil fleet mobilized, a ghost force flying no flag. It swept through lesser colonies under the guise of defense, capturing communications hubs and silencing dissent. Their goal was not conquest. It was isolation, and then they struck. The Valkyrie caught the attack mid-transit. A distortion burst followed by kinetic penetrators laced with viral nanotech. A suicide strike, designed not to destroy but to cripple. Aegis rerouted systems instantly, but damage licked across the hull like fire through dry leaves. "Boarding vessels inbound," he warned. Ilara was already moving, rifle slung, blades magnetically locking to her arms. She moved with mechanical precision, the product of brutal training and genetic discipline. By the time the invaders breached the lower hangars, she was waiting. The fight was swift and surgical. Ilara was not just a commander. She was a weapon honed across generations. She cut through attackers with cold efficiency, giving no quarter. These weren't soldiers. They were zealots, trained not to win, but to martyr. When the last collapsed, bleeding into the deck, she accessed the lead operative's implant. A message pulsed in its dying code. Balance must be restored. The flame must be extinguished. She stood in the quiet aftermath, blood cooling beneath her boots. "Record this," she told Aegis. "No more shadows. Broadcast everything." Within the hour, the galaxy watched. Footage of the attack, names of conspirators, the false flag operations, the lies. It was no longer a question of whether humanity had returned. It was a question of who stood with them and who tried to silence them. Thalen, watching from her war room, exhaled slowly. "She's not our enemy." Velith nodded. "No, she may be the only one who can hold this together." In the void, the Valkyrie turned again, engines burning clean. Not for war, for reckoning.